Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true.
Today's video is quite an interesting one. We're going to be hearing history that we have never heard before. This man came out talking about how white people are actually the true Africans and the original inhabitants of the continent Africa, and black people are actually the invaders of the continent. Only God knows what they are up to right now, because they've started rewriting history again to fit their narrative and whatever agenda they are on. The whole thing put together is crazy. Some might even find it funny. But this rhetoric that they are spinning right now is very dangerous for the African people. Because not only is this erasure of the African people, this rhetoric they are spinning right now could again lead to us having a target on our backs for the umpteenth time.
Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true. At one time, there were three different types of people living in Africa. There were the Berbers, who lived in the Sahara before it became a desert. They were white people, and they lived in North Africa. In the south, there were the Khoisan, what sometimes known as the bush people. Yeah. They lived over most of Africa, right as far north as Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa. There weren't any black people living there. There were only the Khoisan people living there.
So were they white, these Bushmen?
They were white people. They were white people.
First things first, the word Khoisan he's using to describe these people is actually a derogatory term that came about during colonization. These people he's referring to, they are the Kwe, they are the Twa, they are the Nama people. These are their original indigenous identities. And no, these indigenous people are not white in any way, shape, or form. He knows this, but then he calls them white. Is this not what they call subliminal messaging? I swear, when these people speak, you have to make sure you listen to everything they say and how exactly they said it. This is how they plant ideas. Slowly start feeding into your subconscious that white people were once here before colonization, and they were actually the indigenous of the land and the first humans. I scream agenda. Because tell me, why else would he be calling people who are obviously not white, white? These indigenous people were never white, and they are still not white. What exactly are these folks going on about? And earlier he mentioned the Berbers of Northern Africa. The white Berbers of Northern Africa are invaders. We can't get into the history of Northern Africa right now. Those who know the history of Northern Africa know exactly what I'm talking about. So what exactly is this man going on about?
North African Imazis have brown and dark skin complexion like other East and West Africans. Some look phenotypically Negroid. Imazis say the pale or white Imazis don't even speak or write the original Tamajide dialect. White Berbers learn from the original blacks their language. They never learn the written script, which is why the black Imazis are the only ones who kept the original writing scripts hidden from white Berbers who can't understand it. It's not as pure, but it separates the originals from the whites. You will not find Rithian dialect written in ancient Old Tifina. They came and learned it under the black Amazigh who worshipped Ammon deity with them in Siwi, in ancient West Libya at Kemet. The pale-skinned Imazis are population replacement racism. Their mtDNA belongs to Mamluks, Kurds, Turks, Albanians, Balkans, Boers, Greeks, Circassia, Spain, pale European slaves, etc.
Saying white Berbers are indigenous to Northern Africa is like saying white South Africans are indigenous to South Africa.
So were they white, these Bushmen?
They were white people. They were white people, and they had an Oriental appearance, had epicanthic eye folds. They looked Asian.
What type of an expensive joke of a video is this? Like, what exactly is going on here? P.S. They are the ones who put the picture display that you are seeing right now. They put that in the video, right? So they know exactly what these people look like. Please, how are these people white? What in the whitewashing is going on here?
These were the original humans. These were the first Homo sapiens that came into Europe. they're still living.
Did you guys notice how he's jumping up and down with this rhetoric of his? Like, he cannot even stick to one narrative. First, he said these people were white. Now he's saying they look Asian. But if you look at these people he's talking about, they are obviously black Africans. So what? They are black African looking people who are white but look Asian. I just can't. Let's just let him keep talking. Now, wow.
On reservations in places like Botswana, about 2,500 years ago, a group of black people called the Bantu, who were living in West Africa, started to expand outward. They started farming and they began to expand outward into the rest of Africa. And they conquered or exterminated everyone that came into their path, or enslaved them if there were any survivors. So they enslaved the pygmies. They killed all the Khoisan, except for a few of them that they used as slaves. And it was the Bantu that conquered Africa. That's why we think of Africa as being a nation where black people live.
Like, where exactly is this history coming from? My goodness, I swear, if you let these people tell it, just let them tell it, the things you would hear.
But it's not always been the case.
No, of course not.
Okay, I mean, even that, I'll be honest, I didn't know that, you know. I mean, I'm showing my ignorance, but I guess if I'm saying that, there's many people who have also had that sort of airbrushed out of their
Yes,
understanding.
I'm sure.
So I'm just sort of I'm going to be open with my ignorance, but you know, I'm guessing this is a chance. This is an opportunity for us to all learn now.
Learn what? What exactly have we learned so far? Except for the white lies that we have been learning for years now. That obviously isn't enough. So you guys are making more. Please don't tell me this BS is going to be going down in the history books. I definitely smell a rat. None of this makes sense, but somehow they are speaking it.
The Bantu spread out through Africa, and by the 16th or 17th century, they were approaching South Africa. Now, sometimes people think that South Africa is a black nation, that it belongs to black people. It's not true. The black people, the Bantu, hadn't reached there when the white people arrived in the 17th century. At that time, the Khoisan, the bush people, were living there, who were white people, indigenous Africans. And so the Bantu and the white settlers both exterminated the Khoisan.
Wait. None of what he just said made any sense at all. First of all, this narrative that they like to push that when white colonizers got to South Africa, they met no people, that's a blatant lie. So let's just put it out there. But for the sake of this conversation, let's go with his rhetoric, right? So he is saying that the colonizers came into South Africa but met no Bantus, right? At the time, the Bantus had not migrated to the place where the colonizers settled. That's what he's saying. So how exactly did the Bantus get conquered and subdued by the colonizers if at the time the colonizers arrived in South Africa and settled, the Bantus had not migrated to and settled in the place that the colonizers wanted to settle at? Except he's trying to tell us now that the colonizers settled first and then the Bantus migrated up to where the colonizers were. So they got conquered and subdued on arrival. Hey, wahala dey for this history lesson. They keep spinning this nobody was there narrative like we all know it's a lie. If nobody was there, who were they stealing land from? We know you were stealing land from people. Like, it's always the same tactics with these folks. They must think people are stupid or something. It's not the same thing they did in the US. When they got there, they said they met nobody there, even though they very much met the Native Americans. Now that I've mentioned it, there is this video I came by that is relevant for this particular point in this video we're in right now, and I think I want to share it with you guys. So please permit me to take a pause right here on this conversation we're having right now so we can take a quick look at this video.
This is U.S. history according to conservatives. First, the Pilgrims came to the Americas to escape the evil British and their evil British ways. The Pilgrims found a completely new land with no people. The Pilgrims were completely friendly with the people that lived there and gave them food because they were starving. Then the revolution began and the freest country on earth was founded. The evil Democrats brought over slaves from Africa. But slavery wasn't really that bad, you know. Slaves were expensive, so it didn't really make sense to just beat them like the liberals try to make it sound. Also, white people back then had it hard too. They were poor and had to work a lot. And you know, there were black slave owners too. So America went to war with the Confederate Democrats. But the Confederacy is like our heritage, you know? We should keep up all the statues that celebrate Confederate generals. But I mean, the Civil War wasn't even really about slavery. It was more about the states' rights to own. I mean, it was just about states' rights. And then America saved the world. But then the Japanese attacked us for absolutely no reason. So we saved the world again. Then there was the civil rights movement, where conservatives were totally the good guys. And the Vietnam War, which was, kind of a tie. But then the greatest thing happened. A movie star became president. But then the Clintons that eat babies came to power. And he got impeached for getting a BJ. And then people from the Middle East attacked us for no reason. The guy that attacked us was from Saudi Arabia, and he hid in Pakistan. So of course we attacked Afghanistan and Iraq. And that's when the evil Democrats elected the Antichrist. But lo and behold, a savior came to our aid. But then the evil Democrats stole it from us.
The reason why I wanted to share this video is because it's relevant to the part of the conversation we're in right now. Whenever you look at their history or whenever you let them tell history, there is always this inconsistency, right? They say something now and next time they're saying something entirely different. But of course, not to dwell on the whole video, the main point in this video that is targeted to the topic at hand is what he said at the opening of the video, right? Which is similar to how if you let white South Africans tell the history of South Africa, they tell you that they met nobody when they arrived. Same thing when you let the white Americans tell the history of America, they'll tell you that when they arrived in America, the United States of America, they met nobody there, even though they met the Native Americans. Then later they tell you, oh, we met them and we're friendly with them. It's the same tactics. Like they are literally all using the same manual. But anyways, let's get back to the topic at hand. Another point he brought up was that the white invaders, the white colonizers in South Africa and the Bantus in South Africa exterminated the queer people, which according to him are white people. During colonization, the goal wasn't to exterminate, colonize, enslave white people. No, it was to conquer other non-white people. If during colonization, white people were doing things for their own interest and for the interest of other white people, why would the white invaders, the white colonizers who conquered South Africa, set to exterminate the queer people, which according to his narrative are white? So if the queer people are white, exterminating them wouldn't have been in white interest, especially because white people at the time already knew they were the minority, because they were going around and seeing all the different kind of people and they knew that they were the minority globally. So why would white people, knowing fully well this information, come by a group of other white people and then unalive them? White colonizers would have been needing them for their numbers and for their manpower. They would have been a bonus to them. So white colonizers would have tried to get them on their team. If white people could make non-white people white, as we've seen that they've done historically, so they can top their numbers, and also so these non-white people could then be on their team, so they can easily achieve their white agenda, their white objective, why would they come by the queer people who, according to this man, are white and then unalive them? Not me sitting here trying to logically analyze a situation that was illogical from the very jump. I don't know, this whole thing is insane. They definitely know they're lying. Nobody's buying this BS. But when I think about why are they doing this, why do white people do the things that they do? For their own interest. They are definitely up to something. They are definitely after something. They are moving, in my opinion, to make themselves indigenous to Africa so they can have rights over the continent. So they can come and say they have a stake here or something. They can, say they have rights to our resources. They wish the continent is theirs, but unfortunately it's not. You belong to Europe. Can they just freaking stick to Europe and leave Africa alone? Now they want to spin the narrative and talk about how they're indigenous to the continent. No, you are not. Talking about how the queer people are white people. You see the lengths they're willing to go to stamp this rubbish. You just see the length. It's insane. Do you have no shame? Now you obviously want to make black people white so you can say those are your ancestors or something. It's insane, man. But jokes aside, this narrative is very dangerous. Remember what I said at the beginning of this video, that this is going to put a target on our backs? Imagine if the large majority of white people now start believing that Africa is actually theirs and that they are indigenous to this land. I mean, in this video, he has already tagged us invaders. You know what that would mean if a time comes where they decide to come take over the land that they believe is rightfully theirs? Do you guys know what that would mean for us, the actual indigenous of the continent? This rhetoric could put our lives in danger. I mean, we already know the attitude of these people. We know how they roll. We know how historically they took land that doesn't belong to them by force. Now come to think about how they would act if they believe that the land is actually theirs and that we are the ones stealing from them. This rhetoric he is spinning is very dangerous and should not be taken lightly at all. And guys, this video goes on for another over 13 minutes. Of course, we cannot cover the whole thing, so I'm going to be leaving it here. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think about all of this. What do you think about this new information that we've come by? What do you think about, you know, the man saying white people are the indigenous to Africa? Wow, serious now. Wow, white people the indigenous to Africa. I never would have thought in my entire life that I would make such a statement. Like that, the word combination, I never would have thought I would have put those words together in a statement. White people the indigenous to Africa. Oh my god. Oh, at this point in my life, I think I can say I have seen and heard it all. But anyways, guys, let's continue this conversation down below in the comment section. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next one.
Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true.